Hi, my fellow fans of the written word. Welcome back to my studying, as you can see. Today I'm going to be reviewing Fate of the Fallen by Kel Kade. It has been provided to me via NetGalley and it is published by MacMillan. It came out last week and I want to talk about this because initially I was drawn to this because it sort of sold itself as a riff or a commentary on Wheel of Time, sort of a subversion if you like. The premise is very much like Wheel of Time. What happens if you have a hero who is not so happy about being a hero who saves the day, a messianic figure. So in a nutshell, we have a character, his name is Matthias, and he discovers that he has been trained and groomed his whole life along with his brother, a stepbrother, not by blood. He has been groomed and educated on all things, and he finds out that he is a chosen one in a prophecy that will doom or save the world. And he fails. And this is not a spoiler, this is present in a lot of the blurbs, and it kind of sells itself on this twist, a very, very early twist that happens early on. So his best friend named Oslo, who is a forester, and in this world foresters are a sort of revered but very it's a very ungrateful but very respected profession. Essentially it's sort of a commentary on, so you have this industry, this post-medieval post-feudal industry that usually happens in epic fantasy worlds, right? And well, wood is heavily used, but in this world people have recognized that in order to maintain and to keep the level of our industry, of our tools, infrastructure, we do need to replenish timber. So we have these specially trained, very hard-working people called foresters who dedicate their lives, sacrifice their lives to maintain the balance of the flora. And this is our main character named Oslo. He is our hero instead of a hero. So let's go break it down. What I expected a Wheel of Time light. As I said, it sold itself as a riff on Wheel of Time, as a subversion of Wheel of Time, but honestly I think that Wheel of Time is already a subversion. Now it is subjective of how much you think this is a subversion of, but I do think that Wheel of Time is a subversion. Rand is a character who is not a typical magical farmer boy protagonist. Yes, he is a magical farmer boy sheep herder protagonist, but his burden is heavy, his situation is different, and the burden that has been trusted onto him, he did not ask for this. He is a reluctant hero, but he is not a prototypical Arthurian legend goody two shoes guy. So I expected this sort of thing, and I also, to continue my last thought, I expected that this will be drawing from the same kind of need to convey a commentary on messianic figures. It is not a great secret that my favorite novel of all time, a series of all time, is Dune. And a lot of people don't like the sequels of Dune, but I love them, at least those that Herbert wrote and not his son. The reason I like this, I like Dune, and the reason why a lot of people love the first novel and dislike the others is the series explicitly changes from a hero's journey where you root for the main character to a commentary on the dangers of messianic figures, of valorizing, deifying a figure, a charismatic leader, a messiah. And those traits are also present in the Dune, the first book as well, but they're not as overt. So I expected a similar kind of thing. So what if Messiah, but why the Messiah? But what I got, let's see what I got. I did sense a same need, a goal of subversion, but in different ways. So for example, let's talk about gender dynamics. This is a very prominent part of Wheel of Time, yin and yang, male and female. In Wheel of Time, there is a power structure element, something that in my Let's Read episodes I like to repeat that a lot. And what I mean is the power structure, we have wisdoms in communities, and they have not an insignificant authority in these communities. We also have women's circle that counterbalances the village elders, the village council. Here in Fate of the Fallen we have the Magi, or the sorcerers of this world, and they are pretty egalitarian. So you have men and women who are sorcerers of different kinds, and they're all treated mostly equally. But the rulers are very much like Wheel of Time rulers. For example, the Queen character, she is very independent. She's also polyamorous, and no one bats an eye. So and that's cool. That's great. So also the parallels come from these quasi-post-feudal marriage arrangements, and these are mostly in rural areas. Same situation with Rand and Egwene, right? They were semi-engaged, and most of the marriages were arranged in these small communities in Wheel of Time. And there is a very similar situation here. Also, there's this thing where early on a woman rides into the village of our main protagonist on a horse, and someone comments that, well, she must be alone, because how could she travel from such a great distance, which implies that this is an anomaly. And what, women are helpless and in constant danger, or this is just a small community type of thing, such as in real life. And lastly, a thing that I definitely did not expect, and this is a minor spoiler, not exactly a plot spoiler, a subgenre spoiler. I expected kind of a epic fantasy-ish world building, but actually this almost verges on science fantasy or magitech, if you like. And it's not a hard angle, but it is there, and it's very present. I don't think it's such a big spoiler as in some series where at the end you find out, oh, this is the future. No, this is not the future of our world. Nothing like that. Just you find out that, well, there are more worlds than these, which is unexpected. So let's move on to the things I liked. So obviously the premise is what attracted me from the get-go. It also kept me going. the characters, to be fair, don't undergo any kind of major character developments, but instead what we get is a very enjoyable read in a way that it's interesting to see them react to their surroundings. And the way they react to their surroundings is in a very non-cliched manner. So, for example, Oslo, the main protagonist, he is a forester. And you would think that, well, he has lived an isolated life. Obviously, he tends to forest. Why would he ever leave his forest and his community? He's an isolated person. He lived in isolation, but this does not imply or mean that he is or was sheltered. He is not. He doesn't fall for ruses. He is essentially what happens when you have a crafty best friend of the real main characters, but instead that crafty best friend becomes a main character, a protagonist. He is, I think, an embodiment of the trope good is not dumb. He is very pragmatic, very practical, but not naive. And this also goes for other tried and true elements of the genre. So, for example, we all know how cryptic and frustrating the prophecies can be. And the main character asks the same question. And this is not that uncommon. There are a lot of, especially lately, a lot of movies and TV series, fantasy TV series and books where a character asks a cryptic sort of character, why is that the case? And here we, the readers, actually get a reasonable, rational response to such question. To paraphrase, prophets are trained to learn to memorize in riddles. So they memorize in riddles because the riddles are intentionally designed to encourage critical thinking. And when you think about the riddle, it ensures remembrance because you're processing the riddle all the time. So it's kind of almost a mnemonic device to remember prophecies, which is great because, you know, the prophets are people who relay the prophecies to the common folk. I also really like small moments. For example, there was a really adorable moment where Oslo was buying a cloak for his companion, Tessa, and they were buying this cloak from a very lonely shopkeeper. And she offers them a discount if they stay for a while and keep her company. And she even has these sort of conversations with inanimate objects like, oh, this jacket is jealous of this jacket. And it was adorable. It was a really touching, really short, but really appreciated moment that stayed with me. Also, I would like to quote a instance of a good joke setup. There are times where humor really lands. So I quote, and you guys know that good prose matters to me a lot. So let's see. What's that idiot doing? Said Oslo. I think he's scared of your arm, replied Tessa. I would be too. Oslo tried to ignore the offensive appendage as much as possible. He clenched a fist and then released it. He didn't know which was worse, the fact that it felt foreign, or that it was becoming more familiar. I can't blame him here, said Oslo, but he's being ridiculous. Tessa nodded. Yeah, it's kind of weird behavior for a horse. So, might be silly, might be minor, but it is something that I honestly really enjoyed. Now let's move on to things that I disliked. there is not an easy way to say this, so I'm going to say it. The first third of the book is bad, to the point where I almost did not finish this book. Mainly the dialogue is the biggest culprit. It's this unique combination of unnatural and exposition heavy. It literally has a moment of, as you know, explanation. I wish I was making this up. So this is a direct citation. And to give context to the scene, one of the protagonists, Matthias, is having a conversation with his mentor about the world. And this is her explaining him the magic of this world. As you know, magic is only passed down the bloodlines. People without magic are called seculars. Although we live longer than seculars, it's difficult for us to procreate. We have more success if we mate with seculars. Doing so waters down the bloodline. So the practice is discouraged unless the bloodline is in peril. There used to be 15 bloodlines. Now there are only 12. Not only that, but the oldest of us, the elder magi like me, bear a fraction of the power carried by our ancestors. The younger generation, magi like your power, dream of possessing even half of the elder. In short, human-born magic is dying. And it goes on and on and on and on. It's awful. It's awful. Thankfully, it's only for the first third of the book. Honestly, I'm kind of baffled on why wasn't this edited out, because the next 2/3 of the book are good, great even. It sounds to me like an editing problem, honestly. And the second problem is world building. Let me explain. The author added a sort of a B plot that heavily involves pantheon of the world intervening. So imagine Iliad scenario with gods roaming and scheming while for the most time being invisible to mortals, just like in the Iliad. And unlike the Iliad, it adds very little. It actively hurts the narrative. I don't care about them. I can't imagine anyone caring about the deities because they're so shallowly written, and this never goes away. This is not a subplot. This is a B plot that is very present in the book. And honestly, as I said before, this book has sort of elements of science fantasy, a cosmic element of other planets and realms, dimensions, things like that existing. So you could have had a cosmic element, which I actually really like. I find it very appealing because it's not as common. It's not portal fantasy. There is no real life. It's just, you know, this is a magical world, but we are aware that traveling to other worlds is possible and they exist. So this is enough for me. The added gods on top of it really hurt this. And I think they are the main culprit for the pacing as well, because the book, the ending, it's abrupt. It kind of, the sense of urgency of the plot does not always correspond to the flow of the story and the speed it progresses under. I wish this wasn't the case. So, what are we left with? Let's go with a verdict. First things first, I fully intend to read the next book in the series because I'm genuinely interested in the main character. His perspective was very enjoyable. The premise is strong on its own, and I look forward to the spin it continues, hopefully, to get on usual fantasy tropes. Also, thematically, if we're talking about a theme, there is this underlying message about apathy, about how it is not a good approach to adversity. That's very laudable, because I think that caring is not a weakness, caring is strength. Oslo, the main character, he's not full of himself. In fact, he knows and repeats it numerously that he's not the type of person to save the day. He knows that he's not a person to do this, but the others are so committed to their fate, to their doom, to their apathy, that he cannot stand their inability to take action. And I just find that a very strong theme. So I recommend this with these caveats. I think other readers might not find these negatives as egregious as I did, but I do still think this is a worthwhile read. It's a good novel. It's rough around the edges, but I think that the series will improve going forward. So that would be it. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time. Also, I've started a separate channel where I just play interactive novels, interactive fiction, choose your own adventure stuff when I catch the time. Things like fighting fantasy books or choice games. I'm kind of reliving my childhood with them right now, because when I was a kid, I was a big fan of choose your own adventure books that were translated to Croatian, and mostly they were I don't think they were the actual choose your own adventure brand. They were time travel related, so you would like flip the page on the chapter, this or that. It was fun. So until next time, bye bye.